All right, welcome again. All right, I hope the previous one was as useful from the earlier ones, so that you can now relate to why the changes have been mentioned through. Right now, as I told you, the 3M strategy, right, that has been discussed, and the M there stands for the monk. Right, the three monk strategy is all about something called tip, top, and som. All right, you would have seen that probably somewhere in the earlier stages. But TIB stands for thinking inside the box, one of the monk mode. TOB is think outside the box, second monk mode. SOM is strategic operations management, the third monk mode, right? We use these three entities in a structured format, be an organization or as an individual in your mind. You create your TIB, your TOB, and your SOMs to make the change and go about making those implementation of changes repeatedly, and in the process continuously improve yourself using tune. Okay, so if you remember, I mentioned there's a startup stage where you come to. There is a very fast paced acceleration for growth when you're in that stage. Then you stabilize, then you lose in yourself, there's a degrowth, you come to a point where you realize that something's gone wrong, and then you can start going your growth route and try to again meet the next stability cycle, okay, until it again goes down somewhere. Now, with that said, the 3M model was kind of constructed or thought through from that perspective. Okay, now once you're in those cycle, right, you move from a startup, you go and become a kind of a business or a system of your own, right? The system that we're trying to anticipate creating here. You start thinking inside the box when you have to make the next change first. Okay, if you realize your finding of the niche was a tip process, your key goals there were to find a financial goal for yourself, a short-term, long-term goal, and which truly is a vision for you as a success goal, and then your relationship goals. Relationship would mean your people, your customers that you deal with, and the others, right? So these two typically become an element to be watched out for with a constructive timeline. You remember, for novice, you mentioned there's a timeline, there's a goal, and there is so many number of customers that one should have. It is all about that. Okay, that's a clear example and simple example here to be given. For an organization, things change a little more drastically, and maybe at the right time during at the RISE1, as I told you, we can go into those details. Okay, that could be your current state once you move from the startup mode. This might not be used or might not be as useful during a startup because it's only tip in motion in the startup mode. All right, you're just constructing your one-way ticket. Right now, once you're in a cycle, right? When I say cycle, you've gone through your growth and stability, you come down, right? On the way down, or even when you're stable, just to see and check your environment, you have to go through a top cycle. A top that is thinking outside the box. You evaluate your world around you, where it's going, what your competition doing. You remember we said you go to Quora, you go to the marketplaces, etc. Figure yourself out where you stand. Are you in the right niche? So you're preempting some things, right? Now imagine you've gone through that whole cycle of stability. Now you're going down, and you are again looking at yourself at the trough to go up, and then you again start evaluating yourself. You do your research and this and the other. This is about that. Now you look at a very different digital asset which is working in a very different sub niche because the world has changed around you, right? It's a creator economy. People are working on digital assets. The larger organizations that depend on smaller organizations because they are growing at a faster rate with the technology prowess that they have compared to them, and the very size is helping them to change their models very frequently. Okay, so that's what when top comes into play. So you think outside the box, you create that asset or that new methodology or your process or your technology that can help for you to move in the growth cycle again. All right. Now to do and help you with this is the SOM. The SOM, as I told you, is strategic operations management. The function of SOM is to research things or re-research things that have been evaluated by, say, a tip or a top based on their understanding of the markets. Then SOM analyzes it further, right? This is deeper. let me say deeper. This will go and do analysis using sophisticated kind of equipment. And equipment, what I mean is application, could be AI, could be ML, NLP, some of those things, to go about seeing how the competition has come about to come to the point where they are or they are not. What has changed the world from nations that they want to be in to the point of which specific audience they can cater to, right? And so on and so forth. Now they start analyzing from that perspective. And once they evaluate this, where they are, they get a plan, action level, so from action plan. And that was from putting the accessible timeline. You are supposed to be busy such that, right? Then you really promise to put that we talk about right? Each of the topics, guidance, and that is what is implement sorry, it was called the implement system, the impact, the opine, and the tune, right? Sorry, I got confused with the acronyms there. So once you do this, they specifically come with those the program resources that they would want and lay out the whole action plan. Once you do that, the sandbox is created. If you remember the MVP I talked about, the sandbox is all about that. You create a pilot for yourself for the changes that you make. You make it with a small chain, form a small group of people, or the small machinery, or the small process, right? See how that comes about, and then you make the larger change. So this is the 3M strategy that comes into play. Okay. Again, each of this topic is a deeper topic, which will get covered subsequently in the areas at RISE5. But each of them come into play at those growth and degrowth cycles, and requires continuous improvement for that training. The whole circuitry of methodologies that come to play for continuous improvement. So this comes in handy during those times. Right? It is very handy at individual level also, once you realize that what you're going through in your mindset, and hence the digital kit for you to understand and be almost at the top of your game every time, so that even if you're going down, you know you're going down, so that you take corrective steps immediately and start running with it. Okay, I hope this was helpful and you understand the purpose that this was mentioned for. Okay, with that, we jump to the next day, the RISE1 fifth day. All right, and that probably is the concluding day where we bring all this together and start working on the practical of putting a business blueprint. All right, I'll see you there. Bye.